What's up, volleyball fans? I'm Darren Tipton, and welcome to the VB Adrenaline Podcast. Our podcast, we will dive deep into the heart of the game, bringing you the hottest topics, prospects, and a buzz surrounding prep and college volleyball, especially the world of recruiting. In each episode, our crew will spotlight rising stars who are shaking up the national game. Plus, we will serve you the scoop on current events that have coaches and fans talking courtside. Tune in for the episodes that spotlight tomorrow's college stars, new trends in the sport, plus interviews that will keep you informed on the explosion that is volleyball in the USA. You can connect with us on social media, Instagram at vbadrenaline.com_ and Twitter at vbadrenaline. Be part of the conversation. Share your thoughts on your favorite players, prospects, and predictions by using hashtag VBAdrenaline. So grab a seat, volleyball fans, and get ready to dive into the world of spikes, sets, and serves with the VB Adrenaline Podcast. See you there. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. Darren Tipton here, and another episode of the VB Adrenaline Podcast, where we talk about everything going on in the volleyball world, from recruiting to college to tournaments to big happenings and rules changes and more. We try and focus on a little bit of everything here, and we're going to dive into a little bit of all of that tonight. My co-host Mac is on the broadcast scene tonight, doing a Big Ten match earlier today. And so I'm taking this one solo, and she will be back with me later this week as we try and get 2 episodes in and catch up. But I'm going to review some hot topics from today and earlier this week. It's been a busy week for us. And so I'm going to dive in and copy or catch you up on some things that have gone on in our world and thus the recruiting world. We got tournament time coming up. We had signing day not too far back. So without further ado, a lot to jump into, a lot of opinions, a lot of heated debates. You got selection show coming up in, I think just a week. And so without any more selling, let's get into it. So today we started a thing about a month ago, and Sydney, our amazing college intern who is in the belly of this beast herself, going to be playing in this tournament here in a week. And she has been so good this year, and balancing her workload with her playing load and what she's done for us. And one thing she had wanted to start about a month or so ago was a list. And one thing we had tossed around a while ago was, hey, let's throw out an opinion list, and let's talk about the hardest places to play in college volleyball and the most intimidating places to play. And on our staff, we have a current player on a top 5 program. We have a former All-American who's also a professional volleyball player who's been played in the toughest conference in America, who also calls games in the toughest conference in America, and has played in every one of these gyms listed. And so, yeah. And then you have myself, who's just a sports fan. And so we threw around ideas on what we wanted to talk about, right? And we didn't want to talk about, right, just the hardest place to win, because a lot of times those go by who just has the most talent. And I understand, and I threw it out and I said, if we don't put who number 1, it'll take less than 30 seconds and we'll have a comment. And it was about 45 seconds, but that's not what this was about. This was about the most intimidating places for visitors to come in and play. And what we were talking about, and for those trolls that just want to jump in and can't have an individual thought for themselves, who only drink one flavor of Kool-Aid their entire life and live in that sad state where there is only one way to think, that this wasn't about that. I have talked to many people around the volleyball world. Yes, Nebraska is amazing. I get it. We're going to talk about them later in this podcast. That's not what that was about. They are a very educated volleyball fan base. Not that these other places are, but when you win all the time, it's expected. And sometimes they're educated. It's not fierce and a intense place. We were talking about the men's basketball, sold out arenas, seething fan bases, like you almost shake a little bit, and not shake because of the banners that are hanging down or the number 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 recruit in the country are looking at you, or that, because of the student section, the pep band, the quaintness of the facility, all of those things, right? That go into, I don't know, what athletes feel. And they're like, I don't like playing there. And so anyways, that was the debate, and it was our debate. And we knew the second we didn't put down Nebraska, we would hear about it. And that's okay. And so this was our debate. And sure enough, you can't have a list in today's world without putting them on that doesn't just get taken over by uneducated Nebraska fans who just has to be all about them. And that's what happened, right? And which is too bad, because what we were hoping was some other fan bases would get a chance to jump in and some athletes would get a chance to jump in. And what is sad is we did hear from some actual athletes. God forbid, right? God forbid some athletes that actually took the floor and actually played in these gyms. God forbid they'd have a say. Like, they might actually know. I played in the Greg, right? Mac played in Elite Eight in the Greg. She also played in Nebraska. And she didn't rip Nebraska's facility. She just said it was really neat. And when you're at 14s in the 5th set, yeah, that is. But the rest of the time, it doesn't feel as intimidating. The Greg was intimidating, right? The field house at Wisconsin was intimidating. And then, of course, the Nebraska fans jumped in with 41 straight, 41 straight. Now, I get it, right? I get it. You just qualified for a bowl game again for the first time in, I don't know, 10 years. So the state's feeling really good, and they had to jump in 41 straight. But I don't know anything about volleyball, and I went and looked up, and you guys should even know that except for this year, I would think y'all would be pushing for the field house, because until this year, Wisconsin hasn't had any trouble the last few years coming in to Lincoln, right, and winning. But the greatest show on earth has struggled at the field house, right, until this year. So I would even think Husker Nation, the Kool-Aid drinking, right, there is no other program in the world other than Husker volleyball would even know that seems to be a pretty decent home court advantage and a tough place to win at. But we've forgotten that now, because Nebraska beat Wisconsin yesterday in football and volleyball, and now that's all we remember. But so anyways, the poll got taken over by Nebraska fans. Nobody else, jumped in, and you got to say, and that got killed, but you got some pretty cool places. And I will just say this, and I know we can't give Pitt any credit because they're a new power and we don't let that count. But I went to a match there, and it was in their bigger facility. And you can ask the young Penn State players what it was like playing in there. And I've been to Final Fours. I've been to the PAV. I've been to the Greg. Obviously, they weren't playing well. It wasn't a typical home match, but that match at Pitt, that felt like a men's basketball sold out conference rivalry. That was just a different feel, a completely different feel. And the number of times Penn State players looked up into the student section, I know they felt it, right? And anyways, that's all we were trying to do. But I get it. We're not ready. We're not ready yet. We'll learn. Our staff will learn. We only talk about Nebraska. My bad. How dare us have an original thought, right? Because I know there's only one program. We're going to learn that later in this podcast because I know they're the only team that's won a championship the last 30 years, and we're just not ready to talk about anybody else. So I apologize, Cornhusker fans. You guys are the greatest, and nobody else exists. So my bad. We just thought we'd have a little fun. We'll learn going forward. But 2 other programs, I think those are pretty cool facilities, and I have been in the pavilion when it's been sold out, a regional. And the Greg, I will say this, I think all the traditions, that student section being like a high school gym. Now, I can't believe that Texas volleyball plays there. I would think they'd be in a much larger facility. But the way that pep band is out there and all of your traditions with the Eyes of Texas and all of those things, I can see where that can get a little daunting as an opposing player coming in there. And I've heard, seen all the tweets from Coach Jandel about Holloway and their student body. And I know what that means. And I've heard from opposing coaches, that's not a nice place to go in and play. So I know they take pride in that being their home court advantage. So some tough places. And I've heard announcers talk about the field house and what that means for Wisconsin. So you guys keep it up, keep being rowdy, and maybe one day you'll be allowed to be in the same sentence as the Huskers. All right. Speaking of that, we'll stay in the same as we come up in the great Creighton debate. And I love this. Talk about as we move on. The tournament's coming up, and Creighton is kind of the topic, and it should be a debate, right? They're breezing through the Big East. They've won it again, undefeated. I think they've only dropped 1 or 2 sets all year, and so the debate is, where are they going to end up? Are they going to get a one seed, and are they going to host all the way through? Will they be a 2 and have to travel somewhere that second weekend? Where are they going to end up? And then the debate, on social media, which is great, of how would they have done in the Big Ten, right? And I think a Husker Rube last weekend had said, man, I think if they'd have been in the Big Ten this year, I feel like they only would have lost to Nebraska. And that's awesome. Those are great debates. They're great to have. I called it the Gonzaga debate from men's basketball, the last 7 to 10 years of the program that Mark Fuse built out there. And they had the same debate forever with, I think, the West Coast Conference that they were in. And they used to have the same debate with them, where once they would get to conference, it was like, okay, if they went through non-conference with 1 loss, 2 losses, undefeated that one year, they're going undefeated. They're going to be a 1 seed. Should they be a 1 seed? Should they be a 2? What line should you put them on? And it was an awesome debate. It was good for college basketball. It was good for the tournament. And then people were like, oh, did they deserve that? And that's what builds a sport. And you won't know if you're right until you play it. And even if you play it, they might have a bad night and you still don't know you're right. But the Creighton fans should dig in, and you should have pride in your program. Those coaches should fight for everything that they get. And those players should say, yeah, heck yes, we deserve a 1 seed. They should, right? And somebody in the Big Ten should be, heck no, you wouldn't have gone undefeated, a 1-loss team in this division or in this conference. That's what makes the sport grow, is a little bit of passion. And it's okay to have it be a debate, right? It's okay to have a healthy debate. You don't have to rip each other's faces off and hate each other for life because you debate it. Sometimes it's good. Get those, get that blood flowing a little bit. And that's good. That's what makes media go. That's what's built ESPN and CBS with their bracket show for all these years. That's what's built that billion-dollar industry of college basketball and March Madness, right? Is debates like that. And that's good for volleyball. But Creighton's got a great team. My take tends to be that the grind of the Big Ten to go on the road, and when they know a team, when teams know each other so well, it's just hard night in and night out to go and battle and have to be at the top of your game for 3 months, 2.5, whatever months straight every single night. And I just find it hard to believe that they wouldn't have dropped one. Now, do I think they would be right on top of that conference? Yeah, I do. They have a very, very good team. And they are senior dominated. They know this is their year to make a run. But the Big Ten, even the top of the ACC, those are tough. And it's the grind of it all. Could they beat any team in there on one night? Yes. And that's what the tournament is about. To win a conference championship and go do what Nebraska has done is amazing. And they are locked in. But that would be my take. Does that mean Creighton can't make the Final Four? Absolutely not. They have as good a chance as anybody because it's one night. 2.5 months, to play like Pitt, Louisville, turn around, or like Louisville, Pitt, fly down to Dallas, play SMU. That's tough, right? And then turn around and play Stanford the next week. That's tough. Creighton didn't do that in conference, and it wasn't their choice. So anyways, great debate coming into tournament time, and we'll see next weekend. And then you can debate it some more, where they ended up. Did they deserve to be there? Did they deserve to be higher? Should they have been a 2? That's what the tournament is about. And that brings in more viewers, and that brings in more spectators and more money and more revenue for the tournament. That's what builds the sport. So it's exciting, but I think that's the big storyline heading in. All right, back to Nebraska. For those people that are like, oh, you're just a hater. No, I'm not at all. And if you read it on our site, I'm neutral. I really can be. People, it's called having your own original thoughts and your original opinion. But I've learned, and if you read on our site, when we interviewed Jalen Reyes during our signing day show, he talked about champions mindset. Now, we also credit, we've talked with the Texas staff about this, and it's not a surprise that both of those programs echo this over and over. Now, I know somebody else is out there saying, well, we talk about this too. We talk about this too. These are the programs that have talked to me the most about this. And I see them practicing this religiously. And what's funny is I think in their cultures, they do it completely differently, which is amazing to me. They both believe in it, they echo it, they preach it, and then they practice it in completely different ways. And it works for them. But the champion's mindset is saying whatever they are given, they are going to make it work for them at a championship level. It's just whatever they are given, a champion is going to make that work, right? And like they talked about our site, right? Well, hey, we, what I want to talk about with this was, we were talking about recruiting, and what's always bothered me is, or not bothered me, but puzzled me, was these recruits going to a program where there may be 3 All-American outside hitters in front of them. And I'm like, why would you go there and be the 4th? And a couple of coaches have sat me down, and not in a negative way. They're just like, you can't understand it. And this wasn't a knock. They weren't ripping me or putting me down. They just said, you don't have that athletic champion's mindset. You can't comprehend it, because a champion isn't thinking about who will I be behind. They're only thinking about the possibilities of nobody's going to get in my way of my goal. And until I talked, Mac and I talked with Coach Reyes on the signing day special. That never clicked. And we were talking about their new incoming setter. And of course, I'm biased to the GOAT of South Dakota, right? Bergen, Riley, hometown. I'm like, why would she ever think that she could play in front of Bergen, right? Like, and Jalen just says, hey, when we talk to kids, they all think they can come in, just like Bergen did a couple years ago, right? There was nothing against, we had Bergen just thought no matter who's there, she could come in. That's a champion's mindset. And unfortunately, he said, you don't have that. So you think the other way, right? Like, why would I go somewhere where I'm going to have to sit on the bench for 2 years? And he's right. That's how I would think, because I never was that elite athlete, right? I was always thinking the opposite way. And so as we get to that's interesting, where as we talk to a lot of coaches, there's a lot of coaches in their programs are run the exact same way, right? You have a champion's mindset in your program. When something happens, do you take it and just say, moving on, how do we make this the best for us? Or do you say, these guys are always going to beat us. It doesn't matter what we do, right? They'll always out-recruit us. They'll always do this. We're never going to get there. Or do you take whatever little victories you can and promote your program and move it forward? And that's what a champion's mindset in a program would do. And so I know I'm rambling, but we see a lot of this, and I've taken a lot of things I've learned from those couple programs and shown them as things you could do in any program, right? And because I hear a lot of it, and I said a lot of this for years, right? Well, Nebraska and Texas are just going to win because they have more money. I was guilty of that for the longest time, and I'm sure that doesn't hurt. Okay, but they built that for 30 years. And what I said a couple weeks ago in our column was, Coach Cook and I are probably a lot more alike than we are different in our mindset, that we are always 2 to 3 ideas ahead of our competition of being original, right? And that's that champion's mindset, that we will never be status quo, right? Now, are his ideas a lot more profitable? Like his stadium match and my signing day show, a little more successful his was than mine, but both original and first-time ideas, right? And pioneering, if you will. And like our, bracket, live bracket show, our June 15th show, some of those things. Well, with these guys, here's some examples. Last night, okay, hands out roses, tons of attention because of the media they have built up and their social media team. Now, as I went through and practiced tonight and did some research, as I was reading a lot of comments and I read down, they said Penn State did this as well, but because of the juggernaut they've created, Penn State didn't get the press for it, right? And that's part of the recruiting game, right? And that champion mindset, when you do it, but do recruits know? And you may say he didn't care. That's not why he was doing it. Yeah. College volleyball, almost everything done publicly is so recruits know it, right? And you argue with me and disagree with me. So everything done publicly is so recruits see it, their families see it, the public eye sees it, and that gets reposted. People like me talk about it, and that trickles down. And if not, you should be, right? Because it's a recruitable opportunity. And these guys are better at it than anybody, right? Now, the other big time programs are doing their own thing, but I also, another thing Coach Reyes said on our signing day show was he's like, we can literally tell kids, because it's the truth, we're already going to do things in 3 years we haven't even thought of yet, because it's the truth, like the stadium match, right? Like they are doing that. And I understand that. We will always stay ahead. We're working on things that we probably won't get to release as a website for another year and a half, right? Because they're long-term projects, but we will always stay ahead, right? Like that's what they do. But the other big time programs are doing that. Dream Team Camp was another example for these guys. Okay. Now, but like if you talk with like the Texas staff, hey, they were after, but then they took it and like, how did they refine it and make theirs even more unique? Okay. Well, now another camp, another school should be like, okay, what do we do to put our niche on this? Not, oh, well, they're already doing it, we can't do it. That's not a champion's mindset. And so as I've talked to a lot of these programs, like, what are you doing? Right? What are you doing to make your program unique? What are you doing when you have recruits on campus or at camp or, and there's so many personable things that don't cost money, that any program could do at any level, right? They're just the little things that these guys have done. And I'll tell you, with this, after our signing day show, another one, right? University of Texas was another guest that was supposed to be on our show. They had a few athletes who hadn't sent in their letters, whatever it's called now. They hadn't got their fax or their letter. So coach couldn't talk about them. They didn't have their letters. Now, Texas got a lot of stuff going on right now. I'm sure he gets asked for how many interviews. They're trying to get their team right to three-peat, right? All that's going on. We received an email from their SID, from their director of operations, and then I received a personal call from the coach apologizing that they couldn't make it. That's a little thing that by no means did they have to do. They're Texas, for crying out loud. We're a little startup program, right? That's a champion's mindset of anybody. These two, right? Coach Reyes, how busy were they? We were 15 minutes behind schedule when he was scheduled to be on. We were texting him, hey, sorry, we'll catch up. We'll bump the next guest so you can get on. He's like, no, I'm fine. I enjoy listening, right? Like he could have big timed us, right? He could have said, well, come on, guys. Could have got ticked off. No, he waited because he knew it was important for them to be seen, just to be there, and it helped us. We will never influence anybody to go to either of those schools, but it was important for them to take that time. And then when he got on, he was amazing. Brad Keller at USC as well, right? Like those are programs that was important, right? And then to get a thank you from them, that's just elite stuff that people don't realize that. And they're like, oh, you play favorites. It's not favorites. Those are just things that any program in America could do those, right? A text takes 30 seconds, right? And I'm not just saying to us, but you do that to recruits, or what do they say? Treat the custodian like you would the CEO. Well, treat the custodians of the volleyball world like you would the CEOs, right? And that's what I mean by the champions mindset. And I've learned so much from these programs talking about it, but I've also learned from some of the others, the non-champions mindset, right? Like complaining about them. And I'm like, yeah, but you're not doing the little things, at least in our treatment, right? The little things that are free that you could do that I think would go a long way. Now, the roses, that's pretty cool. In my mind, that's like a Jedi mind trick by Coach Cook, right? Your bitter rival, you give them a rose, they let their guard down, and then boom, you go and sweep them. But that's amazing. And he did that. Great PR. It was all over social media today. And boom, then he'll sweep them 3-0, and they are locked in for sure. All right. Now, moving on, recruiting stuff. Did an interview, dynamic duo, our two diamond at this time, early eval diamond, PPV evals, Shea Witherspoon and Kendall Mururi. Kendall, I said it wrong again. And this is what's so cool for me. Misconceptions run all over. And then you see them at tournaments, right? And with their friends and whatever, you see them at NTDP. And I was able to talk, and I learned so much more from our interviews before we start recording than I actually do when we record. I am so glad I did this interview. First of all, Kendall is a deep thinker, has an extreme mind for herself, knows what she wants. I feel so much better about her guidance in her process. And that Arizona Storm, that culture that she has there, when she's soft spoken like that, she is a thinker. It was so good the second time that I talked with her. I just really felt great talking to her a second time and left with a big thumbs up on Kendall. I enjoyed talking to her in Vegas when we talked this summer. And then Shea, it was completely different than the person that I thought I was going to talk to. And you could tell that we've talked to her sister, who's going to Vanderbilt 3 or 4 times, and so smooth in the interview. Again, has a definite roadmap, is educated on the process. But I wanted to do a different interview with them because, like it or not, these are elite athletes. They have their pick, basically, other than maybe a school or two, I don't know. They have their pick, and they're in a different spot than 99% of kids are. I didn't want to do your traditional, hey, what's your favorite color interview. And I had asked them off camera if we could ask them some questions that I had just heard about, a couple of weaknesses in their game, because they are still 16. And these are two that could have a chance at maybe being on like the national team someday, which is crazy to me, right? And they both were like, yeah, bring it. We need to talk about that. And I was so impressed by the way they handled that, talking about things they need to work on, right? When so often athletes at this level have always been told how great they are, how great they are, how great they are. And when somebody dares to say, hey, I heard you need to work on this, they get really offensive. Not at all. And they're like, yeah, that's something I am really focused on. And then I was like, well, what are you going to do to check yourself or coaches or, for a goal? And just a great interview. And these two special, that class, as we've talked about, has a lot of special talent at the top end and depth. But if you have a chance, go listen. They're going to be up there, and just really impressed. One of the cool things about our job is that we get to know some of these guys on slightly different level, and really cool. Was really glad that I got to do it, and they took time on a Friday night, which is pretty cool for teenagers to do that. So excited to watch them on their year. That leads me into my last kind of take or topic, and it's taking constructive criticism as a prospect or the parent of one. And, we let out the PPVs of, our silver, gold, and diamond level, the 2027s. We don't do the rankings, right? And Mac has said abundantly on our site that there are, that these move all the time. Right. And we just talked about it with two of the top, if not the top, prospects in the class, that what they need to work on, and I understand parents, you hear all the time how good your daughters are. I get that. That's not what's hard about college. Right? College is that first time that you get there and everybody else is that good or better. College is that first time you go somewhere that you have to sit. College is that first time that you get coached really, really hard. And you can't go home to mom and dad right after practice. You got to figure it out. Right? And again, we talk to coaches all the time. We're like, what's the hardest? And that is right up there. Now, I also understand you come to us and we're like, we hear, how can you do that? I hear my daughter's this and this and this. I get you do, right? And you do that because, one, you're probably paying a recruiter a lot of money, right? And they're going to tell you that because you're paying them a lot of money. Clubs, again, right? And the recruiting process, you're going to hear that, because the last thing I would want to do is tell my number one prospect, yeah, you really got to work on this, and upset them, and then have them go to my rival. Again, if you've paid attention at all to our Straight Talk recruiting, what is recruiting? It's the sprinkles on the top of the ice cream cone, right? It's the sweetest, best part. It's you're the greatest, you're the greatest, you're the greatest. Now you get here, and then it's everything else, right? And so I would tell you, if right now, if your PPV moving up or down really, really bothers you, you got to take a look at if you're cut out to play big time college volleyball. Because if that little thing bothers you, big time college volleyball is going to be a heck of an eye opener, because that's nothing. That's nothing. As a matter of fact, we were talking about it the other day, and Mac was back home, and I told her about an incident that happened, and Mac's like, huh? Like, my mom would have been like, all right, you look at those silly rankings or whatever one more time, and then you get your butt back in the gym and get to work, because those don't mean nothing, right? They don't mean anything. And we literally put that in the article. If you're mentioned, pat yourself on the back for about 5 seconds and then get in the gym, because coaches don't care about our PPV. If you didn't make the list, right, use it as motivation for about 5 minutes, be upset, and then get your rear end back in the gym and get to work, because coaches don't look at our PPVs to recruit and they don't mean a thing, right? But to take it personal and get upset and be mad at us is ridiculous. And if that really, really, really bothers you, you got to look, because college is going to be so much more difficult than that. That's the drop in a bucket compared to the adversity that you deal with at college, right? And they're going to continue to move, right? They're going to continue to move, and we'll put this up one more time. Here's some reasons. The MAC's gone over again. Scores move all the time, and here's why they go up or down. And in January, a lot of them are going to take a jump, because what we saw at the beginning, we may, or our evaluators may have just way overestimated. And we may have, for the whole group, put everybody too high, right? Like the initial 28s, we may bring everybody back down. And that was our fault. Okay. Fine. We're going to get it right by the end. And it was funny because a couple that we heard from a couple kids that got their scores got adjusted and they got brought down. You could tell a couple of them were coaches. Their parents are coaches, because they're like, thank you. I knew my daughter's score was too high. She needs to earn it, right? That's a coach. Like, don't give her that. She needs to earn it, right? And then we heard from another one that wasn't so complimentary, and that's fine too. So they just, these are reasons. You can look, but they're going to move. So pass this on. They're just going to move. And I really don't have a problem talking to a kid about it. Parents, no, because you're not unbiased. You're not thinking clearly. If the athlete wants to realistically know, we've talked with a couple of them already that wanted the constructive feedback so they can get better. And within reason, we can do that and help them. But they are what they are. And again, I'm not the one giving them because I don't know this. We have a team, a random team, and we've gone over that process. So if you don't understand it, you're probably not following our content regularly. So, okay, 2 to close with, and this is why you submit is player evals. But Kaylin Huzendove just sent stuff in, and again, 2027 A5 out of Georgia, but that 223 jumps onto the radar. We are hoping to get in contact with Kayla and get an interview with her. But those top scores, if you look at that number, 126-inch, 3-step, so 10-6 on the 3-step, 10-4, pretty dang good block touch at 6'2", and outside hitter playing again with A5. All-American status last year with her camps. Going to hear a lot more about her this coming year and throw her into the mix with the outside. So we're excited to get a chance to just talk with her a little bit. But a name had just popped up the last couple of days for us. And then Natalie Norton. Natalie was with us, but then updated some things and caught our eye just this weekend. And so again, you look at Natalie at 6'4", again, another outside, and then opposite block touch again with a 10.0, made a big bump in her top score. Again, one probably underestimated the first time. I think got invited to her first NTDP here in the wintertime. So great for her. Excited to reach out to Natalie and hopefully get to talk with her, do a first interview with her. So again, that's what reaching out and updating your profile can just catch our eye. And we're excited. Congratulations, ladies. You never know when you're going to get noticed, and excited to talk with them more. But a couple names, coaches, to get on your radar. And coming up, we're going to wrap it up with this. Mac will be back again. She's crazy week moving across the country to restart her pro career in Nebraska. I guess that's been the theme of the state. So, but we are going to spread the word. Probably the biggest misconception in recruiting. Mac and I are both very passionate about this next episode. Schools of interest, to list them or not to list them. And we think it's the biggest misconception right now between clubs, recruiting coordinators, and athletes. So we're going to hammer that home. That'll be a nice way to digest your turkey dinner at the end of the week, because we're passionate about this, and we know we are in the minority on what we're going to tell you, but this is a huge recruiting information for all you 27s, 26s. So interested to tune in, listen to that one. Everybody have a great Thanksgiving. Hey, you other fan bases, don't let the Huskers have all the fun. Get out there, get on social, be passionate about your teams too, because tournament time's coming. All right. Take care, everybody.